Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up
All that jam.
All That Jam, Quick Hit. Paddy McCann on Live VS Studio.
For me, growing up in a similar area, not too far away, I definitely felt all those influences. And same, when I was kind of coming up in the scene, I never really stopped to think about a genre, right? And for you all, you really do span a lot of different genres. You bring in some world music vibes. There's, of course, jazz in there, some bluegrass, that Americana feel, and folk. Do you have a particular perspective that maybe you want to make sure here and there gets recognized? Like, where
Hmm.
do all those influences come from for you guys?
I mean, a lot of our bluegrass influence was growing up with Old and the Way and even just like the Alison Krauss era of bluegrass and stuff like that. So I don't think that was our intention when the band started, but once we got the first album out there, we wanted to fill in the gaps of like, what aren't we getting to in the set list? What could enhance the set list a little bit more? And I think that's kind of the job of a jam band in general is like, can we add a little reggae? Can we put some jazz? Like I love the idea of busting out into just like straight up jazz for 2 minutes and then, raging back into some dance music and stuff like that. I think, it keeps people in the audience guessing and it keeps us, on our toes, but also having fun too. The bluegrass stuff is an absolute blast, whether we're playing it at high, fast paces or if it's something a little bit more chill in that bluegrass folky kind of vibe. Like, we set out with this new album, like we're going to write some ballads, we're going to write some bluegrass, we're going to write some blues, all that kind of stuff. And I think it really well rounds the band out so that we're kind of touching all the things that we want. It's important to kind of see those influences out and, not feel like you're pigeonholed into just being funk or just being dance or, psychedelic or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the best things about the music that we love is really it can go in any direction. So when you're on stage and you all are kind of getting to that moment where you're going into a solid kind of jam section, improv section, this is something I love to talk about. I love to nerd out on it. Is just what do you all do to keep the flow, kind of keep your individual sounds, but still make sure it's sounding cohesive? Is one of you driving that? Are there cues? Every band does this a little bit differently, so I love to hear, how that happens when you all are in the middle of a show.
That's an awesome question because there's not like a direct answer. So our drummer and bass player have been in the band for just over a year now, Eric Cooper and Jeremy Worthington, both really heavy into the jam scene. Our drummer Jeremy is like a top-notch drummer. He's in 5 other bands. He's played with all of these great guys, over the years, and they all have the prerequisite down. So it didn't feel like getting them caught up to speed. And as of like last November, when we were like really starting to hit a fall tour, it was just that great feeling of like, oh man, there's so much less to think about. The instincts are all there. Our bass player Coop and I, we discuss all the time like night and day formulas that we want to go into that leave us not thinking but thinking at the same time. Like it's a unique thing to be like proud of not having a net at all, just going for it. We try to like prep ourselves enough so that when the jam comes our instincts kind of take over, but it's all about listening. I mean, sometimes we're in the middle of like the first jam of the night. And we're really excited and everybody's just off to the races and it's just too crowded. Everyone needs to dial back. Everyone needs to get a little more quiet. Let the drums, the bass, and me playing rhythm guitar, let us kind of like create the texture. And then let's add some other, I don't know, icing on the cake, as it were, like with lead and all that kind of stuff, more brighter tones. So for us, it's been a learning process over the last year, but it's also been like crazy rewarding, and that like we've learned so much on the stage about each other. I don't know. It's a remarkable thing to just be spending more hours on stage with each other than hours off stage with each other. It's
Mhm.
very unique, and I think jam bands might be the only ones who understand that sort of a thing.
Yeah, and as fans, right? I mean, these are things that we look for, whether we're realizing it or not, and just appreciate so much. And I think there's an element of the indescribable in a band, like you all, that really can make that happen. What I hear you saying, and I'd love to know if I'm kind of on the spot with this, is that there's some trust that you all have with each other when you're there together.
There's a lot of trust, and when it's in a short amount of time, it feels like more genuine. I don't know how to explain that, but it feels like everybody's intentionally giving each other a little bit more trust, a little bit more room. In the past couple of months, like the bass and drums have just taken over to the point where the three of us on guitar are like, wow, like, do we need to do anything? Like, it's all happening right there on the low end and the rhythm right now. So I think, where we used to tread water, now we're doing backstrokes. We're swimming heavily now.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's a
So
beautiful
you
feeling.
It is beautiful. And that energy is always very palpable,
Yeah. I
from,
always tell people, I'm like, if you see us having fun on stage, then you're going to be having fun on the dance floor.
oh,
Cause
yeah.
I mean, we surprise ourselves all the time. We can't help but show it. It's an emotional feeling when you're like, oh my God, we did it. We did it.
And that's what's so addictive about it. I know that you have a bunch of live stuff up on Bandcamp, which is great. Want to make sure everybody knows about that. Do you ever listen back to any of those, whether it's individually or as a group, and you're like, wow, I forgot about that thing, or I thought that actually turned out totally differently than it felt like in the moment?
Yeah, that we didn't know it happened. That's almost every time we listen back to our live shows. I do all the mixing of our live shows, so I have the burden, quote unquote, of being the person who listens to it the most out of everybody. But I get so excited about our shows sometimes. We'll get home from a long day traveling like 10 hours, and I'm like, do I got time to mix that? Do I got time between like midnight and 3 a.m. to just listen to that audio back? Because man, it's so sweet. And now I get to analyze all the little pieces involved with it. And, maybe we don't get to listen to it as a band all together all the time, but when we do, we're always picking apart little pluses and minuses.
Mm. I know you've been doing. You mentioned the mixes and mastering on your live shows. So this is more of a personal thing. I know a lot of sound engineers, either at venues, front of house, for different bands, and to a person, they all say that going to see live music is so different for them now because they're listening differently than maybe they would have before they started doing that. Um, like, is that a different experience for you now? Are you listening to the mix, maybe without even realizing it more
I
when
would
you can see music?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I also do sound engineering too. So like I'm fully inundated by the whole music side of things. But yeah, I would say that's definitely prevalent. I mean, I mixed and engineered the first album myself, so I had to take like a purge and like a step away from the album because I was hearing it in my sleep. I was hearing it in my dreams. I was like, wow, this is real. Like everybody else may have listened to it 50 times because we're listening and mixing. I've listened to it 250 times. So you get a whole new perspective once you've really gone through with a fine tooth comb and really like listen to every single detail, but you got to let it go eventually. You just
Mhm.
got to let it all go. It's all just supposed to be capturing a moment in time.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you know when it's done? Or do you just have to say to yourself, it's done now?
Um, I think when you start subtracting things, you got to like know when to stop subtracting. And
Mhm.
there's a couple of songs on the new album where I wrote a bridge section for it. And I'm like, man, the song's already 6.5 minutes. Do we need a tiresome bridge that just brings you further along? So, yeah, there's definitely a point where you got to cut it off. But I think by having these kind of short, sweet new songs, it was kind of easier to put the kibosh on the song. And I think we're also playing catch up in terms of new songs of ours that are being written
Mhm.
and when they're getting on albums. We, with COVID and everything, we kind of had to have like time to catch up. So now our writing to releasing is going to be kind of back on track a little bit more, which to me
Mhm.
is like so gratifying because I've got like 10 or 12 more songs in the hopper. I'm like, do we just play them live? Do we not even put them on an album? Jam bands do that kind of a thing. So, we kind of have the choice of, is this just going to live live and we put it on a live album at some point? But,
Mhm.
when the songs are churning out so quickly, you're like, let's just play them. Let's just play them. Like, what's the holdup?
Yeah, well, that does bring up a good point. Are you all kind of road testing any of these songs from this upcoming album in the shows you've got at the end of the year?
We are, and we've peppered them into the set list throughout the year. And we have a couple of songs, like our song "Funk Machine," that, like, at least for right now, seems like it's gonna live just in the live atmosphere. We went in the studio to cut it a couple times, and it just never felt like the song that everybody cheers for live and that sort of thing. So we'll definitely be pumping a lot of them out at the 12:30 and 12:29 shows coming up. And one song we actually withheld from playing, the song "Shake It Down." It's got a Little Feat vibe to it. It's just like it's got such a wholesome, rootsy kind of feel to it. And at one point, we were like in the studio, and we're like, "This is so good." And even our deepest, like heavy, like strongest fans have never heard this song. Do we withhold it for a couple of months? Do we hold it until like the album is like about to come out and it's this new song that like even our diehards never heard it before? So we're gonna drop that on 12:30 for the first time. And I don't know, it just feels like it's kind of like a special thing where like, our diehards, they know every song, they know the lyrics and stuff. And this is one where it's like it's in that same vein. It's from that same era, but you've never heard it before, and it's going to blow you away. So super
Oh,
stoked.
yeah. If you are enjoying All That Jam, please like and subscribe to our social media channels at All That Jam Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or visit our website, allthatjampod.com. Make sure to sign up for our email list and tune in every week for new episodes.
Also, look for full interviews on our YouTube channel. And remember, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long.